affected by the coronavirus pandemic, especially developing countries. President Xi says the virus knows no nationality nor ethnicity.
It is meaningful and critical to hold a meeting at this time amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The virus has hit more than 210 countries and regions across the world. It has impacted 7 billion people. The disease has taken the lives of more than 300,000 people. I mourn the individuals who lost their lives to the virus. I also want to express my condolences to the families who lost their loved ones.
Xi said he supports the comprehensive review of the global response for African nations. 46 Chinese medical teams stationed on the continent have all joined the effort in battling the disease. Fourth, Xi said the global public health emergency response system needs to be enhanced. All parties should establish an efficient response mechanism in reaction to future events. Fifth, the restoration of economic and social development in an orderly fashion should be conducted under the guidance of WHO. Sixth, Xi said the outbreak has shown us the world is a community with a shared future for mankind. 马克 CGTN, Beijing.
Meanwhile, the African Union has downplayed recent attacks on the World Health Organization and its Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus. Officials of the African Union Commission and Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said the United States should rethink its decision to halt funding for the WHO. From Addis Ababa, here's Girum Chala with the details.
Since the coronavirus outbreak towards the end of 2019, the world has been hit hard. Hundreds of thousands of deaths have been reported and millions are still sick, not to mention the painful economic meltdown the pandemic has caused. But at a time when many countries are calling for a united front, attacks against the World Health Organization and its Director General have been getting louder. The Africa Centers for Disease Control Director says he is worried about the lack of focus on the real enemy.
This is his first question.
The enemy is the virus, and it's a dangerous virus. We are at war, and if we politicize this it will be devastating for us. I would never have imagined, as a public health virologist for 31 years, that I would live to see such a fast replicating, evolving situation that is that devastating. We only used to, when we studied virology, we studied this in the textbook, and it was 100 years ago in 1918 that we saw such a situation. So it is serious, has everything to do with the looming disaster. But we should, as Dr. Tedros said, let's stay focused, put our eye on the ball, and the enemy is the virus, not WHO, not Dr. Tedros or African Union.
The African Union is deeply concerned about the United States' plan to slash funding for the World Health Organization. According to the deputy chairperson of the African Union Commission, that decision will weaken the global health body.
This is the time for the whole world to come together and recognize that we are one people, one world, with one destiny. This is not the time at all to cast aspersions on anybody. Even though we have followed with some misgivings the statements given by the United States President, who we have a lot of respect for, we are dismayed that they want to use this to cut funding to the WHO at a time when the WHO needed utmost support. So for us as Africans, incredibly, as far as we're concerned, everybody, every peace-loving, every objective person who operates without prejudice appreciates this.
Many on the continent now want China to play a key balancing role here. Analysts say defending the WHO and Director General Tedros Adhanom based on facts helps. The Chinese mission to the African Union has time and again also condemned the move by the United States of attempting to blame China and the WHO over COVID-19. Chinese authorities have called the United States accusations against the WHO and its Director General unfair. Grumjara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Families in Zimbabwe struggle to put food on the table amid COVID-19 lockdown. In South Africa, artists struggle to remain afloat amid coronavirus pandemic.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he's taking an anti-malarial drug he has touted as a treatment for COVID-19. But health experts have warned it could have some rather nasty side effects. Here's Timothy Ulrich with more.
Trump's long advocated for hydroxychloroquine, a drug he considers a miracle cure.
What really do we have to lose?
And now he's admitting he's taking it.
Hydroxychloroquine? I'm taking it, hydroxychloroquine. Right now, yeah.
That's in spite of lack of evidence supporting his claims his own health advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has pushed back on.
Many of the things that you hear out there are what I had called anecdotal reports. They may be true, but they're anecdotal.
Trump's announcement takes those claims a step further, with him taking it preventatively.
What's especially surprising about Trump's news is that he says that he has repeatedly tested negative for the coronavirus. So even as a treatment, this drug is unproven, but as a prevention, it's even more so unproven. There's just no data on its ability to prevent infection.
The medicine is used to treat conditions like lupus, an inflammatory disease. When Trump first recommended it, it made hydroxychloroquine less available to those patients. And now the U.S. president is claiming it's a preventative measure. It could make the drug even less accessible. Timothy Ulrich, CGTN.
A coronavirus vaccine in the U.S. is showing a promise. Drug company Moderna says the first human trials have triggered some level of immunity. This paves the way for tests on larger groups to see how well it will work. Nathan King reports.
With 1.5 million cases and deaths approaching 100,000, a glimmer of good news from the United States. Drug company Moderna, in conjunction with the US government's National Institute for Allergies and Infectious Diseases, say the candidate vaccine has produced antibodies to COVID-19 at or above levels seen in people who have recovered from the disease. The results are just from 8 subjects, and more human trials will continue. But if, and this is a big if, all goes according to plan, then a vaccine could be ready by the end of the year or early 2021. US President Trump is upbeat on the prospect.
We've had tremendously good and positive information on therapeutics, on cures, and on vaccines.
Yes, sir.
From some of the most respected companies in the world, and researchers and doctors and labs. And that's coming in, and I think you're very close to having a very, very positive situation.
And good news on some of the hardest hit parts of the United States. California says sport events could resume next month. Washington, D.C.'s mayor hinted some restrictions could be lifted earlier than planned. And Michigan, too, is moving to partially reopen.
We're confident that in some regions of the state, they've just not been hit as hard with COVID-19, and they are in a better position to begin phasing in sectors of their economy and enter the improving phase of the My Safe Start plan.
However, some states, especially in the south and west of the country, that open up quickly have seen a sharp spike in cases. Now, whether that's due to a lack of social distancing or due to more COVID-19 testing remains to be seen. Governors and health experts will be watching closely on how many hospitalizations and deaths may follow. Meanwhile, on the economic front, another round of government stimulus seems to be put on hold. The $3 trillion package passed by Democrats on Friday is now being held up by Republicans in the Senate. It would provide more paychecks for families and nearly $1 trillion to hard-hit states. But Republicans want to wait and see whether this opening up stimulates the US economy enough to avoid further spending. Nathan King, CGTN at the White House.
And some African countries are ordering consignments of Madagascar's purported cure for COVID-19. The World Health Organization is yet to endorse the COVID organics herbal remedy and has cautioned against its use. The African Union and the World Health Organization have called for its clinical trials. Here's Angelo Coppola with more.
There have been high-level consultations between Madagascar and South African government officials on the remedy.
We actually did get a call from the government of Madagascar. They did ask us that they would like to be assisted in the process of trying to validate and try and help to investigate the scientific basis on which such a drug could be used. I had a call with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Madagascar, and there had been a call from the President, and we then have said that our research, our scientific research institutions would be willing to support an analysis, as it were, on that matter.
Traditional medicine is used in all countries, and there's a plant in South Africa called wormwood that's been used for generations.
There's a herb which we used in my part of the land, which is called mhlonyana. Mhlonyana is actually used for fevers, for flus. When I grew up, we didn't go to hospital. We used mhlonyana. We used a lot of that. And so if you had fever, as young people we knew, you would go there and collect the stuff, and you use it for steaming and for drinking as a kind of tonic and a bath.
The South African health authorities say they won't be drawn in on a debate on the efficacy or otherwise of traditional medicines and cures, including the Madagascar remedy.
When we come across those kinds of remedies that people are using, we make no comment about them. We just simply say we note that they are doing it. The only difference we get involved in as the department, as the government, is when you've got to deal with the scientific analysis of what is that herb, what is the active pharmaceutical ingredient in that herb that could be proven to scientifically, in a clinical trial, demonstrate an effect on a particular pathogen or a particular condition. In this case, we're not there. So we will leave the conversations to go on the way they are going, and we just want you to be aware. We're aware of the conversation, and at a point when it is necessary to assist those countries, we will assist them.
In the meantime, 70 traditional medicine experts from across the continent met virtually with the WHO in mid-May, and they all agreed to clinical trials to be conducted on all traditional medicines on the continent. And perhaps the cure for the COVID-19 is right here. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Burundi is set to hold its general election on Wednesday. The country has decided to go on with the vote despite COVID-19 challenges. There are 7 candidates vying for the presidency. General Evariste Ndayishimiye has been chosen as the candidate for the ruling CNDD-FDD party. Agathon Rwasa is the opposition candidate for the CNL party. The election is set to end President Pierre Nkurunziza's 15-year rule. But whoever wins will be required by law to consult Nkurunziza on matters of national security and national unity. And once he steps down, President Nkurunziza will reportedly receive a $540,000 retirement payout and a luxury villa. Well, as the coronavirus pandemic spreads within the continent, millions are having to go without food. The pandemic has disrupted food supply chains, halting food production. In Zimbabwe, many are awaiting food, and as lockdown measures drag on.
This could be Rosemary Pamire's last meal. She's been struggling to feed her family as Zimbabwe faces a deepening food crisis.
The meal we ate today was cooked last evening and everything is finished, including maize meal, cooking oil and salt. We ate so little and kept some so we can eat today. We can only afford to eat once per day, which doesn't satisfy my family. I wish our government could give us some food so that I am able to feed my family. I don't know how we will survive.
Pamire used to make a living from buying goods from Zambia for resale home. But with the border closed, her passport expired, and with no money to renew it, the burden to fend for the family now lies with a 19-year-old daughter, Anna.
The life we are living right now is so difficult, I don't know where to start. That is why I sent Anna to go and sell ice lollies to raise money so we can survive and not starve and buy food to eat.
At times when there is no maize meal at home and our ice lolly sales are down, our mother tells us to have ice lollies and water, and we sleep hoping for a better day.
The situation in Pamire's family is reflected across the country. Half of Zimbabwe's population need food aid, according to the World Food Programme. Zimbabwe's finance minister has warned of worsening food insecurity if the country does not get financial help to fight the coronavirus. Chamgono, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. We'll be looking at how Uganda Airlines plans to return to the skies amid the coronavirus pandemic. And the COVID-19 pandemic to sharply cut diaspora remittances in Nigeria.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Uganda Airlines is using the downtime created by the COVID-19 pandemic to continue to secure new international routes. The carrier is one of several state-owned airlines revived by some African governments in 2019. Between September 2019 and March 22nd, some 80,000 passengers flew on Uganda Airlines' fleet of 4 aircraft. It has secured the right to fly to the Middle Eastern hub of Dubai, and it is seeking to secure similar rights to London and Guangzhou in China. A few hours ago, we spoke to the CEO of the startup airline and asked him why the carrier's growth plan was still on track despite the present pandemic.
In fact, the plan was that we would run the regional program for 2 years before we go international. So essentially, the 4 CRJ 900 aircraft were to run to open up routes and build a hub through Entebbe International Airport in preparation for the 2 A330s which are coming at the end of 2020. And we are targeted to start obviously international operations when the A330s arrive.
Is that still on course though? The A330s are still coming this year.
It is still on course. In terms of the funding side, obviously monies have been allocated in the budget for the capital required to purchase the aircraft. In terms of the plan to open routes, we have been working hard to get the permissions that we need. Principally, there are 3 routes we are looking at initially. The route to the UK, which is mainly London, and then to the Middle East, which is Dubai, and also to China. We are aiming for Guangzhou. So we have got permissions to operate to Dubai so far, and we are working on the other two routes.
Right. Walk me through how you're viewing this return to the skies plan. We've seen some airlines, and I'm referring to Comair here, for example, in South Africa. Their board was arguing that maybe at best we might see a resumption of flight operations somewhere in the fourth quarter of the year, around October, November. But even if you were able to fly at that point, what will the flying experience be like for passengers? If I board one of your CRJs from Nairobi coming over into Entebbe, what should I expect?
First of all, I think before you even fly, you expect to get a lot of information from us, both on the website as well as within our offices, telling you what you will be expecting on these flights, and also explaining to you, for example, that in as much as you are in a confined cabin, the air circulation and the hyperfilters that are on the aircraft are good enough to take all the particles up to 99.95%. And that air, that circulation is removed every 3 minutes, which is better than a hospital, for example, where it's 10 minutes. And in our houses, it's at least 30 minutes. So that's one. Secondly, you can expect that flight attendants and all our people will have personal protective equipment. You can expect to be sanitized at several points. You also expect that your bags will be checked through, and they will also undergo a sanitization system. Our aircraft will also have sanitizers as well as enhanced cleaning, typically to make sure that there is disinfection before and after every flight. So those are some of the changes that you can expect to see.
One of the other things, just before we get to the airport bit, one of the other things that we've seen some competitors, some other airlines around the world doing is they're also spacing out passengers to some extent. So if you've got this big 777s, for example, every other seat is skipped and it's empty. Now, essentially that means that your revenue per passenger kilometer essentially drops quite a bit. And the CRJs you're flying have a capacity of about, 70 to 90 passengers. Is that feasible? Is that something you're considering doing?
It's not feasible to have social distancing on an aircraft. I think even when you have larger capacity long term, that is not a feasible option. So when you look at the risk on board, you're basically having person-to-person transmission. That's where the risk is, assuming that you can sanitize the entire cabin. So the expectation is that every person on board will either have a health certificate. In addition to that, they will have personal protective equipment.
CGTN's Ramanyang there speaking with the CEO of Uganda Airlines. Meanwhile, Ethiopian Airlines has been converting its passenger planes to cargo aircraft so as to improve its revenue streams following a huge drop in passenger numbers. Ethiopian Airlines CEO Tewolde Gabre-Mariam says the airline has already converted 22 planes to meet a growing demand. CGTN's Beryl Oro has that report.
Engineers at Ethiopian Airlines are busy converting passenger planes into cargo freighters. With many countries having banned international flights, passengers around the world are grounded. Most countries have halted cross-border movements to curb the spread of the virus. This situation has hurt the aviation sector, forcing many airlines to adjust to survive. Many countries are prioritizing the importation of essential goods, and Ethiopian Airlines has scheduled more flights to ensure prompt delivery.
The majority are importers of COVID-19 personal protection equipment and medical supplies. And these are located in Africa, in Europe and America, and particularly Europe in the beginning when the COVID-19 spread was very high.
Ethiopian Airlines has not cancelled any jet purchases so far despite the collapse in air travel, though several orders, including some from Boeing and Airbus, have been delayed. The firm recorded a loss of $550 million between January and April, but has ruled out seeking a bailout from the Ethiopian government.
We are a little bit more optimistic, So we see some kind of maybe 50% recovery in the summer because it's a summer peak. And we see that people are sick and tired of the lockdown, as you can see in Europe and America. Governments are opening, even people are also going out because people were not meant to be locked down.
The global aviation industry has been hit by the coronavirus pandemic, forcing airlines that were once eager to order new planes to now scale back their flying schedules and park most of their planes. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Ratings agency Moody's has kept Egypt's credit forecast steady at B2 and forecasts its outlook to remain stable. The firm praised Cairo's strong economic policies and cited strong capacities to manage shocks. This is despite the slowdown in the Egyptian economy due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's Adel Mahroui with more.
Moody's saying Egypt's ongoing credit strength is unlikely to change under the COVID-19 pandemic. Backed by the country's economic reform, the firm believes that the current economic pressure will only delay but not derail Egypt's move to reduce debt.
Under the current global economic circumstances, for Egypt to still be capable to cover its financial obligations, that's a great indication, especially when compared to the regional countries. Our debt to GDP ratio is decreasing and Moody's is noticing that.
That's on the medium-term forecast. But to keep that credit rating, though, Egypt must step away from any pursuit to restructure debt. That's why Cairo is moving to get more loans. It began with a $2.7 billion rapid relief instrument from the IMF and could seek up to $9 billion from various debt tools.
When Moody's hold our credit rating, this means that portfolio managers in the world's biggest financial institutions will consider Egypt. That means that we'll see good numbers flowing in as hot money and in the stock market.
Topped with this week's Central Bank of Egypt's decision to uphold overnight deposit and lending rates at 9.25 and 10.25%, risk analysts should see a premium in Egyptian bonds. That could create appetite for future offerings and ease the current foreign reserves bleed, which is estimated to go down to $30 billion by the end of the fiscal year this June.
Usually, Cairo would be seeking to improve its credit rating. But given the current circumstances, the high interest bill and the drop in revenues projected in the coming months, maintaining a B2 rating from Moody's is a great achievement. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Diaspora remittances are a vital source of foreign exchange for Nigeria, sometimes even exceeding the country's earnings from oil. Remittances last year were estimated at about $25 billion. By the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic across the world, the inflows to Nigeria are projected to decline. CGTN's Deji Badmus has more on that report.
For quite a number of Nigerians with relatives working abroad and who receive remittances frequently, the COVID-19 pandemic has been more or less a double jeopardy. Just as they're on lockdown in Nigeria, so are these relatives on lockdown abroad.
Some of them are out of work because of COVID-19. They will not have to send home to their relatives or to businesses or activities they have in Nigeria. So a drop is expected.
The World Bank estimates the drop in remittances could be up to 20%. An estimated 40 million Nigerians live outside the country. The Central Bank of Nigeria puts the total amount of their remittances in 2019 at $17.5 billion. But some other estimates put it higher, at $25 billion. The projected 20% decline would therefore have profound consequences for the individual recipients of the remittances.
These remittances are personal monies that have influenced livelihoods and are used as social safety nets by families and communities and also by commerce and industry here in Nigeria. Some of it is used to pay school fees, definitely that will be affected. Some of it is used for health, that will be affected. Some of it is used for social events like funerals, weddings, naming ceremonies, and the others. All those will be affected.
And it's not just the individual recipients who would be affected. Over the past few years, diaspora remittances have become an important source of forex for the country, edging out both foreign direct and portfolio investments in 2018 and helping to build up reserves. The drop could pile further pressure on the local currency, which has been devalued as dollar revenue from oil slumps.
It's now more urgent than ever that we address our local manufacturing capacity for two reasons. One is to reduce imports. The other is to increase exports, because there are captive markets, certainly in West and Central Africa and even Southern Europe, that we can easily export to if we have the right quality of products.
As the world begins to open up again after the prolonged COVID-19-induced lockdown, the remittances are expected to gradually begin to climb back up. But some analysts say it might take up to a year before the remittances get to their pre-COVID-19 levels. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos.
And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. In South Africa, artists struggle to remain afloat amid coronavirus pandemic.
When you look at Africa, what do you really see? Do you see fast-growing, endless deserts and parched earth? Or do you see the biggest opportunity for an agricultural revolution in a generation? Do you see crowded, unplanned cities or vast, untapped markets? Do you see a population at risk, or do you see a billion-strong opportunity to grow the next wave of multi-billion-dollar firms in Africa? When you look at Africa, what do you really see? Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
South Africa's arts industry has been left reeling as calls to end the extended lockdown grows. An up-and-coming township group has shelved the launch of its debut album and Kenyan tour. The band is hoping on to hope that it can survive this uncertain time. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
Sanka Experiment's healing African melodies can no longer be heard on the streets around its Soweto studio. Their instruments rest quietly, and the band has not met in 2 months.
We miss that energy we have with one another on, rehearsals, performing. We miss sharing ideas with each other. We miss, but while we're still here, we still find ways to connect. We still connect and to ourselves mostly and to each other and what we do and the cause that actually brought us together.
It was meant to be a special year for the promising township band. They were hard at work on their debut album.
We had everything planned out. Even for us, releasing our album has been a year-long preparation, and then all of a sudden, boom, corona on everyone, not just on us, on everyone, and then everything stops, and then you realize that you can't release your album anymore. It's a little bit heartbreaking.
With events banned for the foreseeable future, live performances and a Kenya tour have all been cancelled. The online route has not really worked for them either.
The network can be bad, but it can be good some days. But during the time when we need to do the work and we need the audience to be aware and get the content, and it can just be a glitch just somewhere, just one of those challenges,
It's very hard when you are a band than just being an individual artist or a duo. It's easier to do things. So with us, we're a huge collective. And for us to give our music to people, people need to see all over us because it's 6 people or 7 people. And we're just hoping for the best because I think at this current moment, the only thing that we can hold on to is nothing else but hope.
The state has set aside $8 million for the sport and creative industry, but it's been inundated with applications. Sanka says it doesn't know where else to turn or how it will survive if it cannot start performing again. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And coming up in your sports news. South African tennis great John Lafney Dejaga launches an initiative to support struggling coaches during the COVID-19 lockdown.